Good day all you wonderful people, welcome to Adventure Together. My name's Al and today I'm talking about the Leave No Trace principles that you need to know when you're heading out into the backcountry. Now if you'd asked me about Leave No Trace principles when I first hit the Appalachian Trail a year ago, then I would have just told you it was as simple as burying your poop, hanging your food and taking your trash out with you. But there is a lot more to it that you need to know and we're going to go through it today. Now there are 7 principles of Leave No Trace and we're going to break down each one into their separate examples. And the first one of those is to plan ahead and prepare. So what does plan ahead and prepare look like? Well, you've got to know the rules and regulations before you go. All these different places have their separate rules and regulations. Some places require you to bury your poop and your toilet paper. Some say pack your toilet paper out, for example. Some say that you have to have bear canisters if you enter the area. Or some places say that it's as easy as hanging your food or leaving it in a approved bear box. The Great Smoky Mountains National Park, for example, has the rules that you have to stay within the confines of a shelter and that you're not allowed to free camp anywhere else in the park. But there are other places along the trails that allow you to camp where you wish. You should prepare yourself for extreme weather, whereas it's extreme heat or it might be extreme rain or extreme cold. So check out the weather before you go and make sure that you've packed the right equipment to deal with those temperatures and weathers. You should make sure to appropriately schedule your visit so that you're avoiding crowds and you're avoiding being part of the masses that descend upon parks during their busiest periods. To minimize impact, make sure that you're visiting in small groups. Don't take along 24 of you. Repackage your foods to avoid excessive waste. A lot of the trash cans in the park aren't regularly emptied, so it's better for you to have taken out all of that excess packaging, repackaged it into Ziploc containers, and that way you're not throwing away excess amounts of trash. It is encouraged for you to use a compass and a map or GPS so that cans and marker paint aren't used excessively to help people find their way along trail. The second principle of Leave No Trace is travel and camp on durable surfaces. This speaks for itself. Basically, don't go off into the brush and make your own campsites, but some people do. Make sure to stay on maintained trails and only camp in designated campsites if they are available. If you can't find a designated campsite, then make sure that you camp 200 feet away from water sources. Remember that good campsites are found, not made. So don't try and create your own campsite where you could find something that's already established. To avoid widening the trail, walk in single file. It's usually only wide enough for one person at a time, so try not to make that trail wider than it needs to be. Where you can, make sure that you're camping in small groups to avoid making campsites that are already designated even larger. And lastly, avoid using non-designated campsites that somebody else has started to create. Just because you've seen somebody else camp there doesn't mean that you should carry on camping there. Let that area regrow. The third principle of Leave No Trace is to dispose of your waste properly. This is as simple as, if you've brought it into the backcountry, take it out of the backcountry. What you bring in, you take out. If there are toilet facilities available, it is best to use those already instead of digging cat holes. Cat holes are supposed to be a last resort. On the Appalachian Trail, the majority of shelters do have privies which you can use, and a lot of people brown blaze, which is where they save all their number 2s for those privies. That is actually the best thing when it comes to Leave No Trace. Instead of going off into the woods and digging a cat hole, it's a lot better for the environment if you use the already established privies. If you do have to dig a cat hole, make sure it's between 6 and 8 inches deep. Do your business in that and then make sure to cover it over. Last year along the Appalachian Trail, it was perfectly fine to bury your toilet paper but not your other hygiene products. But make sure to check the rules and regulations of the area that you're in, because there are some areas that require you to pack out your toilet paper and not to bury it, because animals can dig it up and leave it all over the place. When you're digging a cat hole, make sure that you are at least 200 feet away from a water source. Do not poop in the water source. If you've used water to wash off your body or you're washing out your pots after cooking at night, make sure that you scatter that water by throwing your pot and scattering the water across a large area rather than just pouring it onto the ground. And make sure that you're also 200 feet away from a campsite and 200 feet away from water sources when you do so. The fourth Leave No Trace principle is to leave what you find. You've all heard these phrases before, like leave only footprints and take only photographs, things like that. Make sure that you don't have an impact on the environment by taking things out of the environment that you've seen and taking them home with you. A basic rule to go by is to look but don't touch. Leave rocks and plants where you find them. If you see a pretty flower, then just leave it where it is so that many little flowers can grow. If you see rocks and you are tempted to build your own cairn stack, please don't. Trail maintenance and rangers absolutely hate it when they see that people have taken rocks out of the backcountry and built their own cairn stacks with them. There are many reasons not to do it. One of them is that when you move a rock, there are lots of little organisms that live under those rocks, little insects and bugs and things like that. So when you take that rock away, you're basically lifting the lid on their houses. Another example of leaving what you find is to not dig trenches or to build anything. This doesn't really go for most through hikers. Most through hikers aren't going to be digging in the ground or building anything, but there are people that go out in the backcountry and decide it might be fun to build a structure of something out of sticks and rocks. The fifth leave no trace principle is to minimize your campfire impact. So instead of thinking it's all romantic to cook your meal on a campfire, use a stove instead. That's highly encouraged. Don't start a campfire where you don't need to. But if you can't help yourself and you really have to start a campfire, only start a campfire within established campfire rings. Make sure you keep those fires small and only use dead wood that you found on the ground that you can break by hand. Don't go breaking things off of trees or tearing branches down or sawing them up just so that you can start a campfire. And make sure that when you're finished with those campfires and you're going to bed at night or you're leaving that shelter or that camp spot behind, make sure that you put out those fires. Dig them over and douse them with water so that they can't continue to burn. The sixth leave no trace principle is to respect wildlife. We all know this, don't we? It's just common sense. Observe wildlife from a distance. Don't go chasing them down the path for the perfect picture or the perfect selfie. Try to stay out of their sightline. Do not feed animals. It gets them used to humans. It changes their behavior. They might approach humans in future. It's common that animals that have been habituated to come close to humans for food. Make sure when you're camping in the backcountry to protect your food properly, either use an approved bear can or hang your food. You shouldn't really be sleeping with it in your tent because it's not just bears that come along, but it's also rodents. And people using established campsites will find their food is being raided by rodents more often than not because those rodents know that they can come to those places and get a good meal. If you're taking your pets out into the backcountry, make sure you control them. Don't let them go chasing off down the path. That's why it's advised to keep your dog on a leash when you take it out to the backcountry. It's not to protect other people so much as it's to stop them chasing off other animals. It's also advised to avoid high wildlife areas during sensitive times. These sensitive times are during mating season, nesting season, or when they're raising young, or during the winter period when animals might be hibernating. And the seventh leave no trace principle is to be considerate of others. Respect the people that are hiking and camping around you and try not to impact upon their experience. This might be as simple as, if you're in a shelter, not spreading out all of your gear all over the place. Also keeping noise to a minimum. There are a lot of people at the start of the Appalachian Trail that were either very, very noisy or they were playing music on Bluetooth speakers. Also, don't impact others by taking your break on the trail. Try to take your breaks off trail so that people who are coming down the trail and hiking along it don't have to leave the trail just to get around you. And lastly, make sure that you're courteous to other people on the trail and try to give way, especially if you're on the uphill. People who are walking up the hill should have right of way over people coming down it. So that's it. Those are the 7 leave no trace principles that you should know when you go out into the backcountry. But that is not a complete list. So if you know any other leave no trace principles that I have not mentioned, please leave them in the comments down below. If you like this video, please leave a like. Please consider subscribing and share this video to anyone that you know that likes camping, hiking and adventure travel. And for now, that's it from me. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you in the next one. If you do have to dig a cat hole, make sure it is 6 to 8 inches deep. That is not 6 to 8, that is 6 to, between 6 and 8.